I'm Linda Trevino Crothers, and I'm originally from Houston, Texas, but I've lived in Indiana because I graduated from Purdue University, and I worked for Indiana Bell, and I moved my way down back to Texas with Time Warner and AT&T again in Houston and Dallas, and then AT&T transferred me here to St. Louis. So I have an extensive network of peers throughout the Midwest and Texas, and a huge family in Texas, some out in Florida, as well as Arizona and California. So when COVID first started, there was obviously a lot of concern, and I worked for Verizon as a contract project manager, and immediately all of the Verizon engineering and project manager departments were required to work from home. So that was a big change for me. I had worked from home on an as-needed basis. Being a manager in the telecom industry, that's one of the fringe benefits. But this was completely different because it was day in and day out. And fortunately, my internet was already prepared for working from home. I have a small consulting business on the side, so I had my own little home office. So in that respect, I was good. It was great to be home with my daughter. She's disabled, so she's home all day. And it's also, I have a bunch of golden retrievers. So we first were impacted in late February when my son's Boy Scout, Mr. Camden, was ill. And at that time, it was very difficult to get tested unless you had the pre-existing type conditions, which he did not qualify. So they just sent him home, said, "You'll be fine." Well, he kept getting worse and worse. Finally, they admitted him into the hospital, and unfortunately, 2 days later, he passed away. So that was a big wake-up call for me on how serious this was. And my son, and then shortly thereafter, the schools.
How did your son take that?
You know, he was nervous about going out in public and not wanting to go out to dinner, not wanting to go through the drive-through. He was like he was like in charge of all of the scouts. So I was really close to him and his wife. I say really close, but generally close. And you know, we used to go to each other's homes, and they'd come over for a barbecue or a cookout. And just, she was one of the moms that always participated and was highly active in Boy Scouts. And that was Diane Camden. And then I started to hear about my mom's cousins in South Texas that were in assisted living homes. And they were elderly, they were over 70 years old. And you know, every 2 or 3 weeks, someone was getting worse, and if someone got worse, then that person died and another person got worse. So it was a revolving door. The one case I don't know, would be my mom's cousin. So her cousin's granddaughter, it's a very distant relative, had recently graduated med school, healthy, beautiful young lady, emergency room doctor, and she passed away in March. So my entire family was pretty scared about COVID, especially down in Texas. My mom has been disabled since she was 48 years old, and she's got a whole long list of medical issues. So we were terrified, and she's always in the hospital every 2 or 3 times within a quarter. So sometimes once or twice a month, it just depends. So fortunately, she didn't catch COVID until about December, right around the holidays. And she was sick pretty bad for about 3 days, and we're very blessed that she recovered. My sister had it and was sick for 3 weeks. I had a nephew with asthma. He couldn't go back to work for over 6 weeks. He started feeling better, but his test kept showing that he was still positive for COVID. So until he had a negative test, he couldn't go back to work. So my whole family has been drastically impacted. My husband's a construction worker. Those job sites were shut down at the schools because that's where the projects were, and the schools shut down. But fortunately, I was still working. And then in June, my contract with Verizon expired. So I have been looking for a full-time service senior project manager opportunity. I did take that time to study my PMP. Whoop, I passed it, haha. And I have an electrical engineering degree from Purdue with an MBA. A lot of years of experience, and a lot of it is in older technology. So that's the catch, is trying to get in with all of the software and application development on the IT side. I'm more hardware and infrastructure. So
also, what has it done to your personal life? What do you feel? How do you feel during this time?
I am a very outgoing person, and I like being out and in the sunshine. So I'm also a risk taker. I'm the kind of person that actually jumps out of airplanes. Perfectly good airplane. So I am, my children are not out of school. I have a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old, but they're very independent. And my husband and I, on occasion, would go out to dinner. We would do safe social distancing and wear the mask. And I took up some part-time jobs. I do Lego robotics. I've worked at a furniture store. I'm working at Dollar Tree now as well. And I get to talk to a lot of people all day long. And if I caught COVID, it would have been probably last November or earlier in the year, like when it was all going around in like March, or even the winter before everything happened in winter 2018, because we had several people that were drastically ill with respiratory infections and were hospitalized at Verizon. So I don't know. They couldn't figure out what it was, but we suspect that that's what it is.
So
now.
You haven't felt your stress level to go up or your happiness level to go down? Or
No, I have been impacted greatly. I have days where I am just dragging. It's very difficult for me. I get very depressed. I have high anxiety, financial stresses, trying to make the rent payment, trying to ensure that life is kind of seamless for my children.
Your husband's unemployed?
He was unemployed recently. He just started working again. He's a bricklayer, so he works when there's work available, and sometimes it's a 3-week job, sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's 6 months or a year. His last job was 4 days, and then he started another job. So this will be about a 3-month job.
You've had some depression.
Very much so, yes. Have a doctor that gives me prescribed medication, and I don't know how well I'd be able to manage all this without the assistance of the medication. I know sleep, diet, exercise all plays a big role, but it gets to a point to where it's just really overwhelming.
Do you think are you going to get vaccinated or?
I got vaccinated Friday. I did feel really bad Friday evening, and Saturday morning I had some diarrhea.
Do you think that when the COVID lifts, when enough people are vaccinated, that you'll feel better too?
I will have great relief because my mother just got her first round, and my father and my stepmother. So once my extended family and my close friends have been vaccinated, I will have more sense of peace instead of all of the unrest. Last August, I had a cousin that was getting married. His dad's 80 years old, wanted to go to the wedding. Some of the family member didn't want him to go because of his age. They wanted him there. He wanted to be there. He's 80 years old. He's lived a wonderful life, and he was willing to risk. Unfortunately, the groom got sick the very next day. My uncle got sick. They were both in the hospital. My nephew's young in his 20s. He recovered within a week. My uncle spent 6 to 8 weeks in and out of intensive cares and rehabs and nursing homes, and eventually he had a heart attack, and he just had no fighting chance. So that was 70 people at that event. I'm a Hispanic background, so we're always hugging and kissing and very close to one another. It was a long reception with a barbecue and dancing. I wasn't there, but it was just a lot of human interaction. And I know people talk about going to events where there's hundreds of people there and they didn't get sick. Well, maybe there were hundreds of people there, but they didn't talk to one person for more than 15 minutes. I know at my son's school, that's a criteria with the COVID. If a child or a student tests positive, they try to find out who all the student was in contact with, all the school staff as well as any other students, but the contact needs to be at least 15 minutes or longer.
Do you have any final thoughts on COVID this year, your personal journey?
My personal journey is, I'm a Walking Dead fan. And I feel like this was a little taste of the apocalypse coming, and just a dash of it. I'm from Texas, Houston, always been prepared for hurricanes, and my husband had endured some snowstorms in Indiana, so we're always the ones that have extra water and food in our home, plenty of paper products and so forth, so we felt comfortable with that. We were lucky, never ran out of the toilet paper. But we had puppies at home in January, and we were going through paper towels, and fortunately by that time we were able to get some paper towels the beginning of this year. I think it's a life lesson of just trying. It's hard for me to do my advice, but to focus on the now and the today, have my long-term plans, but to be ready because it's going to be upset, and just kind of take a deep breath and say, this too shall pass. It will, I'll get past the hump. And the biggest thing for me is how it's going to impact my children's life going forward. My daughter started college. It was a big mess the first 3 weeks. She couldn't get logged on. The teachers posted their links to the wrong website, so she was 3 weeks behind. That put so much stress on her. And in the end, I ended up having to withdraw her from the university. So we're hoping this fall she can sign up again, and if anything else, at least take classes online.
Thank you very much. What town are we in right now?
We are in Ellisville, Missouri, and I'm 3 blocks over. I live in Wildwood, Missouri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.